some Florida State snowflakes around the UNCLELOU comment section lately. But anyway, that's not the point of today's video. But good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on YouTube today. So thanks for watching. I sure do appreciate it, man. It's nice out here today. Poured down rain this morning. As most of you guys know, I'm in Augusta, so you got the Masters going on this weekend, and it's not looking too good for the golfers over the next few days. It's like between a 50 and 80% chance of rain today, tomorrow, and Sunday. So Masters may be going on until Monday or Tuesday unless some of this weather clears. But anyway, I know not very many of you interested in golf, but and I'm not either. You know, the Masters is a big deal here for obvious reasons. But up today, the Clemson Tigers best case, worst case scenario video. This is an entire series of videos we've been doing, right, where we take a look at teams, an early look at their schedule, some of their key losses from last year, new additions for this year, and we try to figure out, you know, what's the best case scenario in terms of regular season record if everything goes right, and if everything goes wrong, what would be like a worst case scenario. So not really the goal here to try to figure out exactly which games would be wins or losses. Those videos come in the summertime. I start those the end of June this year. I'm planning on starting those and doing those videos through the entire month of July into the first couple of weeks of August, and I'll go through the schedules game by game at that point and give you a winner or a loser for every single game, and of course an exact record prediction for each team that we cover. But you guys, this is the 10th or 15th, I don't know, 10 or 15 of these videos we've done so far, so you guys sort of know how these works. Shout out to Charleston Frat Boy over on the Uncle Lou Patreon page. He requested this Clemson Tigers video, and sir, this is the last one as far as the request from the Patreon page. So if there's another team you want to see me do for these best case, worst case videos, leave that team in the comment section of this video. This will be the video that I come back to from now on to scroll through comments to find the teams that you guys want to see for a best case, worst case. If you're wondering if I've done a team already or not, I've created a playlist on this channel called Best Case, Worst Case 2019, and all the best case, worst case videos are within that playlist. If I can remember, I'll put a link to that playlist right up here, but most of you, I'm sure, know how to find it. And let me apologize to you right off the bat here, Charleston Frat Boy. I have some stuff I have to do today. I don't have the time to devote to this video that I would like to. It's one of the reasons I'm sitting out here filming this video on my cell phone instead of in my studio where I normally film the videos. So I'm going to do the best I can for you with the time I have allotted today. If there's another team you want to see me do, sir, Charleston Frat Boy, comment on this video or go back to the Patreon page and leave another comment there, and I'll do another team for you to try to make up for this one. But, all right, Clemson Tigers, right? Auburn with a lake, really, when you start talking about Clemson's campus. One of the only campuses in America where they have to put directions on the street or around Clemson so that people are able to find the stadium. Not sure, well, I am sure why that is. But anyway, nevertheless, I digress. This isn't a trash talk video. This is a best case, worst case. I mean, okay, recap last season. Undefeated national champions and absolutely destroyed Alabama in the national title game. I mean, this has been talked about enough. I don't really need to spend a lot of time dissecting Clemson's season from 2018 like I did with some of the other teams, because, I mean, you ran through almost everyone on your schedule. You had a couple of close calls at Texas A&M early in the season. You had another close call at home week 5. The first week, Trevor Lawrence was named starter after Kelly Bryant announced he was leaving. And, of course, Trevor Lawrence went down early in that game, and that was sort of a tough one. But other than that, you really weren't challenged all year long up into and including the playoffs. You ran through Notre Dame like they weren't there. And like I mentioned, you absolutely dismantled Alabama, which is something we haven't seen done to an Alabama team in over a decade. Saban had some struggles his first year or two in Tuscaloosa, but since then they've lost only a handful of games, and most of those losses have been really, really close. So it's been a while since we've seen a team do to Alabama what Clemson was able to do to them last year. Will they be able to repeat that in 2019? Not necessarily steamrolling Alabama in the national title game, but will they be able to go back-to-back and win a national title? Well, I honestly think Clemson's toughest opponent this year is going to be themselves, and that may sound a little cliche or whatever, but cliches are usually cliches because they're either true or ingrained in a lot of truth. Um, Alabama is widely considered, and I believe this to be the case. I think Alabama is probably the greatest sports dynasty of all time over the last 10 years. What they've been able to do in college football over the last 10 years is just unbelievable, and I don't think we'll ever see it again in our lifetime. As good as they've been, they've only went back-to-back one time. 11 and 12, I think it was. Maybe it was 12 and 13. Anyway, it was 6-7 years ago they went back-to-back. It's very, very hard to win one national title. And it's been proven that it is almost impossible to win two in a row. It's not to say that it can't be done, and that's not to say that Clemson isn't or shouldn't be the favorite to win the national title in 2019. I think most people are going to have Clemson as the favorite. Obviously, a lot of people are going to go with Alabama again. And then you've got a handful of maybe 4 or 5 other teams that most rational people give some sort of realistic shot to. Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and then maybe another group of teams underneath that, maybe a Texas, maybe a Michigan, maybe a Florida, although I'm not too sure about that. Maybe a couple of maybe Washington or Oregon out of the Pac-12, maybe. But anyway, so is anyone going to be shocked if Clemson manages to win another national title in 2019? No one's going to be shocked. Is it a guarantee? Is it going to happen? No one knows. I haven't made my predictions for any of that yet. I'll do that more towards the end of the summer. All right, so what does Clemson lose from the 2018 season that they have to look to replace for 2019? Well, the obvious answer, right, is going to be along the defensive front, the front seven. A lot was made heading into last offseason about all of Clemson's juniors that decided to come back, right? And Clemson reaped a huge benefit from that, obviously. This year, though, they have to replace all those guys. Now, can they do it? Well, I think there's 1 or 2 guys that you just can't replace. They were that good. Does that mean you're going to have some huge drop-off along the defensive front? No. Clemson has recruited good, really good, not great, not elite, right? Which is scary, really, if you're a fan of a team not named Clemson, because if Clemson ever gets to the point where they are, then how good could they be, right? What Clemson has done really, really well in recruiting is identifying specific players that they want that fit with what they want to do and getting those players, specifically at the quarterback position, the skill positions, and the defensive line. Clemson has recruited at an elite level along the defensive line. They've had a string of really, really good to elite quarterbacks, and they've had a string of playmakers at the wide receiver position. Running back wise, they've had good running backs. The one they have now, Etienne, is probably the best of the bunch that Dabo has had, and he's really, really good, an All-American candidate. But if you look at Clemson's last 4 recruiting classes, right, so 19, 18, 17, and 16, which are the 4 recruiting classes that will make up this year's Clemson team, the 10th ranked class, the 7th ranked class, the 16th ranked class, and the 11th ranked class. So Clemson's best class over the last 4 years is worse than Alabama's worst class over the last 4 years, and they still dismantled Alabama in that national championship game. If you look at the early 2020 rankings in recruiting, Clemson is ahead of schedule there. They look like they're going to have one of the best classes in America for 2020. I know there's a lot of time between now and early signing day in December and then late signing day in February, but Clemson is ahead of where they have been at this point in recruiting in years past. It looks like Clemson is set to get probably their best recruiting class that they've had under Dabo Swinney in this 2020 class, and that's a scary thought for everyone else because Clemson has absolutely dominated over the last few years with recruiting classes nowhere near really your Alabamas, your Georgias, your Ohio States, your Michigans, your Texases, teams like that who have consistently been in the top 5 or 6 over the last few years. Clemson's highest class has been 7. So does that mean they're going to have a huge drop-off trying to replace this defensive front? I don't think so. They rotated a lot of guys in and out last year. I think Clemson is going to have a good defense again this year. Will it be as good as their defense was last year? I don't think so. I don't think Clemson's defense will be as good as it was last year. They lose a lot along the defensive line and the linebacker position. They've got to replace a corner. I don't think, I mean, forget the talent. Those guys had a ton of experience and everything else to go along with that talent. I don't expect, Clemson's defense is not going to fall off the map. That's not what I'm saying, and I'm not trying to say Clemson's going to have a bad defense, but last year they had an all-time great defense in terms of what Clemson has ever had. I don't expect them to repeat that. I think it'll be a similar story to what you saw with Georgia from 2017 to 2018. Georgia had one of the best defenses we've ever had in 2017. In 2018, we still had a top 15 defense, but it wasn't quite where it was at in 2017, and that's what I'm trying to say I expect from Clemson's defense for 2019. I still think they'll be really, really good. I still think it'll be the best defense in the ACC, but I do expect it to be not quite as dominant as what we saw last year. Now, offensively, they don't lose a whole lot. They return 3 starters on the offensive line. They return Trevor Lawrence. They return the running back, ETN, and they return some serious playmakers at the wide receiver position. T. Higgins, Justin Ross. We saw both of those guys go off in the national championship game. They're both going to be back. Clemson could have one of the best offenses in America this year, period. Oklahoma has had some great offenses over the last few years. Alabama had a great offense last year, and Alabama's another team that has a quarterback that can sling it around to a handful of NFL wide receivers, and Clemson fits that same mold. Concerns on Clemson's offense: one of the offensive linemen that you lose is the left tackle. Left tackle, one of the most important offensive line positions. Most people would agree, especially for a right-handed quarterback. Left tackle, very important. And in the SEC, you see a lot of dominant edge rushers. So the tackle position becomes that much more important. He was a 4-year starter for you guys at Clemson, so he was entrusted to protect going all the way back to Deshaun Watson. He protected Deshaun Watson on the left side. He protected Kelly Bryant on the left side, and of course, last year protected Trevor Lawrence on the left side. So replacing him, not going to be the easiest thing to do in the world, and playing left tackle against SEC teams, which is what I'm assuming would happen if Clemson makes it to the playoffs again. Or even, they're not just the SEC. You have good edge rushers on several teams in the ACC too. So I'm not trying to separate the SEC here. That's not the point. Point is, left tackle is an important position. You have to replace that. We'll see. Will the replacement be as good as what you had last year? Maybe. Does he have the experience? No. And that's something that you just have to play in order to get. You can't make up for a lack of experience without just getting experience. So that's really my only question about Clemson's offense. So, they return a ton of talent on both sides of the ball. Serious losses on defense along the front 7. Question mark at left tackle on offense. The skill positions all return, led by, of course, by Trevor Lawrence, who will most likely be the Heisman favorite heading into the season. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised to see Trevor Lawrence throw for 3,500 yards, 4,000 yards, and be in the Heisman conversation heading into November and December. The guys, and he's a generational talent. He was the best quarterback in America last year as a true freshman, in my opinion, especially when it comes to just throwing the ball. Pure pocket passes. Are there players that can run around better than Trevor Lawrence? Sure. But Trevor Lawrence is no statue. He can move around in the pocket. I looked up how many yards he had rushing last year, and while it wasn't a ton, it was in the positive. So that tells you that he's not taking a whole lot of sacks, and if he gets pressure, if the pocket breaks down, he's able to scramble and move around a little bit. This is something I harp on about Jake Fromm. Jake Fromm, of course, he's also a pocket passer like Trevor Lawrence. Jake Fromm had negative 30 yards rushing for the year. So whatever you think about Trevor Lawrence's ability to run, scramble, move around in the pocket, roll out, whatever, he's better than some people at it, right? Can he run around as good as Tua? No. Can he run around as good as Kelly Bryant even? No. But what he gives you with his arm is unbelievable. The guy there's not 5 people on planet Earth with a better arm than Trevor Lawrence. I could talk for an hour about how good Trevor Lawrence is. I've been a fan of this kid since he was in 10th grade. Of course, he's from the state of Georgia. Everyone here followed him all throughout high school. He was just unbelievable. And it just continued last year with his freshman year at Clemson. So your offense, I think, will be better than it was last year, probably, which should make up for any ground that you lose on the defensive side of the ball. So Clemson's going to be a dominant team. Again, I'm not telling anybody anything they don't already know here. Let's take a look at the schedule. I mean, this is going to be one of the easiest one of these I've done, right? But, all right, you open up at home against Georgia Tech. That's a Thursday night game. So a lot of people will be watching. Georgia Tech, of course, new coaching staff, new offensive scheme. I'm under the impression that it's going to take Georgia Tech a couple of years of really bad football before they really get things turned around. The majority of their players, particularly on offense, were recruited to run a certain style of offense, to triple option under Paul Johnson. Now he's gone. Not sure how well those guys are going to be able to run a more traditional offense. We'll see. Whatever offense Georgia Tech decides to run, though, they can't compete in this game. A home opener for Clemson. I'm sure it'll be at night, right? Would it be in a Thursday night game? You should roll in that one. Week 2, I think, will be a really good game. You get them in Clemson this year, a rematch from last year's game at Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M is going to be a really good team this year. Jimbo Fisher is the most familiar of any coach in the SEC with Clemson and Dabo Swinney, right? Because he came from Florida State, where he played Clemson a bunch of times down there. So he's the most familiar with Dabo Swinney and sort of Clemson's style of football of any coach in the SEC. And we saw that last year when Clemson had to travel there and play in Jimbo's first year at Texas A&M, one of the toughest games Clemson played all year. Now, how good is Texas A&M going to be this year compared to last year? I think they're going to be better. They've got some key losses. They lose that running back. I really liked him too. Travion Williams, I think his name was. Dynamic player, one of these smaller guys, but super quick, fast, shifty. One of those types of guys, caught a lot of balls out of the backfield, that kind of thing. Home run hitter. I mean, you give this guy the ball, he could go 80 yards anytime he touches it. He's gone. They got to play a little bit better on defense, right? Texas A&M does. But do I expect Clemson to lose this game? I don't expect them to, no. But when you're looking at this schedule, if you're trying to find any possibilities of losses, I mean, this is one. You know the confidence points thing that ESPN likes to do, where you assign a confidence point to each game. If Clemson fans were doing that with this schedule, I know Clemson fans think they're beating Texas A&M, and you'll be a favorite in that game. But this would be one of the lowest confidence points you assign to this schedule. That's the fairest way I can put it. On the road at Syracuse. These are 2 of your toughest games of the year, and you get them week 2 and week 3. So if there is any sort of national title hangover heading into the 2019 season, these games could potentially jump up and bite Clemson. I obviously think Clemson is better than Texas A&M and Syracuse, but just looking through this schedule, those are 2 of the tougher games. You get them in back-to-back weeks early in the season, one at home, one on the road. Then you get Charlotte at home, a nobody team that you should roll. Your backups will get a lot of playing time there. On the road at UNC, another team with a new coach. They bring Mac Brown back, dust him off. I don't think very many people expect much out of that this year. And then your first bye week, of course, you get 2 bye weeks. Every team gets 2 bye weeks this year. It's not a change in college football. It's just the way the calendar is set up this year. Every team gets 2 bye weeks. Come out of that, rivalry game, sort of. Florida State, but they come to you this year. Florida State, terrible last year. Missed a bowl game for the first time since like 1976 or something like that. Worst offensive line in America. Willie Tiger looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. They've got issues at the quarterback position, in my opinion. I'm not sold on this Blackman guy. Florida State fans are mad at me because I didn't talk enough about Alex Hornibrook, the transfer they got from Wisconsin. Listen, Alex Hornibrook had an NFL offensive line at Wisconsin and an NFL running back. He's not winning any games for you, okay? He's an average game manager. That's it. The guy can't throw the ball that well. He's not the answer for Florida State at the quarterback position. And to make things worse, I mentioned this yesterday, Willie Taggart hasn't signed a quarterback in either of his first 2 classes at Florida State. That's a problem. Clemson should roll in this game. Then you go on the road to Louisville, another team with a new head coach, one of the worst teams in the Power 5 last year, Louisville, of course, them in Tennessee. You come out of that, you get a couple of home games, Boston College and Wofford. Boston College, not a terrible team, but not a team that should be competing with Clemson, right? And, of course, Wofford, a lower classification team. You should handle that without a problem. On the road at NC State, that could potentially be a difficult game depending on how good NC State looks this year. They're up and down from year to year. Some years they look like they can compete with some of the better teams. Some years they look like they don't even belong. I haven't taken a look at NC State for next year yet to get too specific about that game, but generally speaking, most people would assume you're going to win that game and be a pretty heavy favorite, even though it's on the road. Then you come back home, you get Wake Forest. I sort of put them in the Boston College category. Some years they're pretty good and win a game or two that they shouldn't. Other years you look around, they're winning 4 or 5 games. Again, this game's at home for you. No one expects you to lose that one. And then you get your second bye week before your annual game with South Carolina, which you have to go to Columbia and play South Carolina this year. I've made no secret about it. I expect South Carolina to take a step back this year. You know, they're not replacing Deebo Samuel, who's the best player they've had since Marcus Lattimore, or on offense, or if you want to look at the Jadeveon Clowney on defense, we're not replacing him. Will Muschamp's been there 3 or 4 years. They've yet to find a legitimate running back. I think their defense will be okay, but not to the point where they can stop Clemson. And I think even though Clemson will be a big favorite in that game, I think Clemson is bothered by the amount of yards and points that they gave up to South Carolina last year. I know they dominated the game and won, and it wasn't even close. But you gave up 600 and something yards or whatever. You know, that's just a point of pride, I think, for Clemson. And so you get a bye week before that game, even if you're sitting at 11-0 and you know, that game technically means nothing at that point. I still think Clemson comes out looking to prove a point in that game probably, and it's a rivalry game, so you'll be up for that game no matter what. I mean, best case scenario is 12-0. You're going to be favored in every one of these games. You're going to be favored by 3 touchdowns or more in the vast majority of these games. Games that I think will have the lowest point spread in your favor: Texas A&M, Syracuse, NC State, and maybe South Carolina might be under 3 touchdowns. The rest of these, you know, I don't know. Worst case scenario, I do think it's possible you lose one of those first 3 games. Not the Georgia Tech game probably, but I mean, I do think Texas A&M is a good team. I think potentially a top 10 team. I think it's possible they could get you. It's at Clemson, though. But then you got to follow that up with a trip at Syracuse. If they can sort of repeat what they did last year, or maybe even get a little bit better, we'll see. We've seen them beat you before when you had really, really good teams. Was it 2 seasons ago? It was either 2 or it might have been 3 seasons ago now. You lost there. I think that was the game Kelly Bryant got hurt in, if I remember. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point is, I think Syracuse... Is Syracuse a top 10 team? No, but they're a top 25 team, I think, and you got to play them there a week after a tough game against Texas A&M. So I think it's possible that you lose one of those 2 games. I'm not saying you will. This is a best case, worst case thing. But I'm going to be honest here. I don't see you losing 2 games. I think worst case scenario is 11-1 and a return trip to the ACC championship game. There's not another team in the ACC that's good enough to go 11-1. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that Syracuse does beat you. Syracuse isn't going to run the table. They're going to have 2 or 3 losses at a minimum. So you would still make it there. And you could say the same for any team. Whether if Florida State beats you even, and that's your only loss, you're still winning the division and making the conference championship game. If NC State beats you, whatever. I'm going to say 12-0 best case scenario. Worst case scenario is 11-1 and a return trip to Charlotte in the ACC championship game. All right, that's it for the Taters. Make sure you comment down below. Let me know which teams you want to see me do in this best case, worst case scenario thing. I'll go through the comments. I'm going to try to pick out like the teams that are mentioned multiple times, or if teams are mentioned that I already wanted to do anyway, I'll do those teams. I'll sort of go through in the best way I can. I'm going to try to get to as many of you guys' suggestions as I can. I want to have this series of videos finished up over the next couple of weeks, though, so we can move on to some other things. But I appreciate you guys watching. Thumbs up this video if you don't mind. It really helps me a lot. It doesn't take you any time at all. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really does help me a ton. Thumbs up this video. Subscribe to the Uncle Lou channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year, and sometimes they're even watchable, although this one may not be. I don't know. Have a great morning.